Today, I want to actually talk about communication. Communication is one of the key area in managing a project, and most times people always neglecting the fact that communication is the key life cycle of a project. People has this mindset that as far as we have known the stakeholders, as far as we have known what the objective of the project is, as far as we have known the requirement of the project, there is no point of communicating everything to the customer. There is no point of letting the stakeholders know what we are and what we intend to do. There's no point of trying to involve or identifying stakeholders in our project, since you have known the end result of the project, or is a predictive that you can be able to say this is what we expected at the end of the project. This is the result expected at the end of the project. People now fail to understand the importance of communication, and the communication doesn't end just on your sponsor. It's also across the line of the project, including your horizontal and vertical, including the team member, external and internal team, and the stakeholders. You must be communicating continuously. PMI will tell you that the communication is 90% of the project. What does that simplify? It simply means that you're supposed to be communicating throughout the project, from the initiation stage to the end of the project, the closing stage of the project. So there must be consistently communication in your project. There must be consistently engagement, and not just communication. Communication goes two ways. He can pass information without feedback. He didn't communicate. Communication, when you encode a message, he expected that the receiver must decode that message for you to give you feedback, to ensure that message is actually being passed. And there is a means of communication that you also put into consideration. And if you don't understand stakeholders' means of communicating, it becomes a problem to the project. So we have to know, how does we engage stakeholders? What was the expectation of every stakeholders? And when are you expected to communicate to them? So when you now be able to analyze these communication processes and analyze the important things to communicate to each stakeholders, and what are their interests and their power and their influence on that project, it becomes very easy as a VC for you to know the means of communication. Some people may require for you to communicate through phone calls, through mail, or whichever way. So you have to understand when to communicate and how you should communicate to every stakeholder. So it's a very critical area, that communication is a very critical life of a project, that you should be communicating continuously, engaging with your team. Not just communication, even training is actually part of the communication. Also training them, upgrading their knowledge, and also know their challenges and know what to do at every point in time. Communication is something that is very, very important, that if you're able to communicate, you also need to understand that there must be a feedback. Without feedback, communication didn't happen. So there must be there are so many means of communication. It can be a verbally talk, it can be a sign, it's a communication. It can be a brainstorming. It can be facilitation. It can be in different ways depending on the ways you want to communicate. It can be through voting. There's a communication that you see that the stakeholders are not actually aligned. It's better to use voting methodology or method for you to be able to get the highest number of votes to win the process. So there's a lot of means that you need to use to communicate to your stakeholders in order for you to start solving the problem. So it's very, very important that you actually engage all your stakeholders while communicating, identifying them and understanding the method that are required for you to communicate to them. So communication is a very, very key factor that can never be neglected in managing your project. And not just communicating, and communicating at the right time. Most times People don't know that communication that does not take place at the right time is actually a problem. You have to know when to communicate, and you must be proactive in your communication. So that two things, if you fail not to communicate on time, it may likely affect the delivery of a project. It may affect the processes of a project. So it's always been very important that you communicate on time, which will enable them to make decisions that will require feedback that will use to impute on your processes, on the way you are delivering the project. But once he failed to communicate on time and he went ahead to be doing what we are doing, and the stakeholder may come back and say, "No, this is not acceptable. This is not what we intend to have. This is not the result we are expecting," and it definitely affect the outcome of your project. So it's always been very, very important that you actually communicate at the right time, at what point, and understand, take feedback, follow up. You can't just communicate and keep silent. You are required for you to follow up, for you to understand their own point of view, and for you to see how we can be able to shrink these things on your requirement and on the project. This is the very, very fundamental stuff that you cannot be able to toy away. So communication is the lifeline of a project, no matter what kind of project that you are managing. So it requires stakeholders' engagement. So you can't throw away and neglect the processes of communication. Thank you.